This is Democracy Watch. Mark, the moment we've been waiting for, we finally got a ruling out of Georgia where those three MAGA members of the state election board implemented a rule that would have required a hand recount of all ballots in the November election, a move which would have certainly thrown the entire race there into chaos. So the judge ruled. What did he find?
Yeah, so in a blockbuster decision late at night, the judge blocked this rule, saying that it was too much, too late. That this rule was passed at the very last minute, that it would put chaos into the system. The poll workers had not been trained on this hand counted ballots, and that the state election board, their effort to at the last minute pass this rule, and by the way, some others, right, which he didn't rule on, but it sort of foreshadows where some of these other rules may be vulnerable, that their effort to pass these last minute rules are not going to succeed, and this hand count rule is blocked.
Mark, did he rule on the ability of the Georgia State Election Board to be able to even pass these rules, or just on the timing with which they tried to pass it?
So on this one, it was a little bit of both, right? On this one, it was that it was too late, but he definitely seemed to also question the underlying premise of why this was necessary. But that's a fight for another day. That'll be a 2026 problem when you found a younger lawyer to be on this series with you. Glenn and I are getting old.
No. I think we're okay. I think we'll be fine for 2026, especially if Donald Trump can run for president in 78. I think we're okay. Can this ruling be
maybe what I'll do is say, you know what? At this point, let's just listen to some music.
Yeah. Just should we do a 39-minute special where we just sway back and forth?
By the way, the most pathetic part of that was Kristi Noem, who tried to act as if what was going on was normal. Let's just show some tape here.
Let's not do any more questions. Let's just listen to music. Let's make it into a music. Who the hell wants to hear questions, right? Isn't that beautiful, though? We could do another question or two if you'd like, but probably. Do you want to do one? Do you want to do? Let's go. But it ends so beautifully. How about this? We'll play YMCA.
I mean, there's the smallest part of me from deep down, just as a human being, I do kind of feel bad for her in the sense that she has to, to your exact point, she has to pretend that this is all fine when this is definitely not okay. What do you think when you are already 15 minutes in, and she didn't even know that she wasn't even halfway in, of just swaying on stage in what would amount to no fewer than 10 songs?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, and the fact is that, and it's a microcosm of what we talk about all the time in terms of democracy, because, one of the things that comes up over and over again, I think, in these videos and with the audience is, how is it that not just Donald Trump says these things, but 3 election board members in Georgia are passing these rules, that you have Republican secretaries of state and saying things. So you have Republican members of Congress in the Senate, who are asked questions like, did Donald Trump lose in 2020? And they seem unable to answer the question. J.D. Vance, unable to answer the question. And right. And in some ways, I brought this up because Kristi Noem having to sit there and act as if what was going on was normal is actually a metaphor for the entire Republican Party and the reason why democracy is where it is today.
Right. They are trafficking in make-believe for a guy who has based on all the data that we have, 2018, 2020, 2022, 2023, been an albatross around their necks, and yet, they continue to hitch their wagons to his. Going back to the Georgia State Election Board ruling, can this ruling be appealed?
Yeah, look, I am sure that the state election board, those 3 MAGA members, will insist on appealing. It would go next, presumably, to the state's intermediate court, the Court of Appeals, and then ultimately to the state Supreme Court. In some instances that can be accelerated. I don't see any evidence that'll be the case here, but I'm sure they are going to appeal this up the chain. But look, there is this principle about not changing the rules too close to the election, and the closer we get, every day that goes by, it becomes even less practical to implement these rules for the 2024 election. So I feel, I feel like, first of all, I think the trial court got it right, but second of all, I think the appellate courts are going to be loath to, at the last minute, interject uncertainty into this.
What are the rules as they stand right now in Georgia then? What can we expect for how the election process is going to play out in November?
Okay, so there's the rules and then how we expect it to play out. The rules are that, the precincts, people cast their ballots in the precincts, and the precincts report those results to the counties. The counties will collect those results. They will have a canvas in which they look at all the tapes and make sure that any provisional ballots are adjudicated and handled, and then they certify the results. Now, there are other efforts by the Republicans on other rules. For example, they want that discretion in the certification process. Now, they had a big setback because an election denier named Adams on the Fulton County board tried to proactively bring a lawsuit saying, I have discretion, and the judge said no to that, right? But there is still the lawsuit pending that we're waiting for a ruling in about whether the rule that was passed along those ways is struck down. I think it will be. And then there are some other rules that the state election board have promulgated, and they may, who knows, maybe even try to rush them more. But the way this is supposed to work is the way I just described.
You had just alluded to the other ruling that was handed down that found that officials, including members of the state election board, must certify by the certification deadline. So what are the implications of that move here?
Yeah, so this was a lawsuit actually brought by an election denier on the Fulton County board who's like, excuse me, I would like to do my own investigation, and only after I am satisfied that everything is proper and correct, I'll take my time about this. Right. Will I certify? And I
and this was somebody super closely aligned with Cleta Mitchell, for example.
Yes, right. The national Republican lawyer who was on the Georgia call, I might add, in the famous Georgia call with Brad Rasenberger in 2021, finding the 11,000 votes. But the court said absolutely not. The court basically said, look, there is some minimum amount of investigation you can do, but honestly, it is, regardless of what your investigation shows, it is a ministerial act. Like, you have to certify the numbers you're given. You don't have discretion. And by the way, if your investigation is taking too long, forget your investigation. You cannot miss the deadline. So the court really gave the back of the hand to this argument that there is any discretion in the certification process. And I expect that there will be further rulings in line with that in the coming days.
And by the way, I would just mention that you've been covering this extensively on Democracy Docket. So for those who aren't yet subscribed or signed up for Democracy Docket, it's the news outlet Marc founded to focus on everything voting in elections, especially important right now as all of this kind of bubbles up to the surface in the lead up to the November election. So I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. If you haven't yet signed up, do yourself a favor and sign up. Marc, this is something that's been completely perplexing me, and that is that Georgia Attorney General Carr, he had said this about the rule that was ultimately just struck down here. The statuses upon which these rules rely do not reflect any provision enacted by the General Assembly for the hand counting of ballots prior to the tabulation. These proposed rules are not tethered to any statute and are therefore likely the precise type of impermissible legislation that agencies cannot do. So why did Carr not only not exercise his power to stop these state election board members from enacting this scheme, he actually defended them in court? How do you square that circle?
Look, at the time that the Attorney General issued that opinion, and I think there were also words from the Secretary of State basically along the same lines. One of the things that you and I talked about, people can go back and look at the tape, is whether or not that they would actually challenge the laws. Right? Whether they would be like, okay, it's great you issued a letter. How about now? How about now they pass the rule? How about you sue and challenge the rule? Right? And the fact is that these are still MAGA Republicans. They may not want chaos on their watch, and I think that is true. I don't think the Attorney General or Secretary of State want chaos on their watch, but that doesn't mean that they are prepared to do the affirmative step of opposing something that Donald Trump has come out, so strongly in favor. So I think Carr went as far as he felt like he had to, or he did as little as he felt like he had to do to keep kind of the business community and the normal Republicans feeling like he's, not just allowing the place to go to hell. But he was not going to go further than that. And that, I think, is probably a good wrap up of what you can expect from him and from Secretary Raffensperger as we move forward.
It was very Mitch McConnell blaming Donald Trump for the January 6th insurrection before then refusing to vote to convict him for the very thing that he just said that Trump was responsible for. So, again, the bare minimum.
It absolutely is. And maybe this is the point at which we ought to play a little Laura Trump and just sway to the music.
That's right. All right. Well, let's finish off with this then. While that music plays underneath. Now that
because I know you're a big fan. People don't know this about him. There are Springsteen fans. There are Taylor Swift fans. This guy is a Laura Trump music fan.
Let's just say I was a Laura Trump music fan before it was even cool to be a Laura Trump music fan. Now that this specific threat regarding the Georgia State Election Board and hand counting ballots has been neutralized, are there any other ongoing cases related to the Georgia State Election Board that we should be keeping an eye out for?
Yeah, so there are. Look, there remains other cases challenging this rule. That there were several lawsuits filed around this rule by various counties, by the Democratic National Committee, and kudos to them, by the way. Great job for the lawyers for the DNC in this case. But so those cases have not yet been adjudicated, but I think will come out the same way. There are also still cases pending over the certification issue. So the case that's been decided was the affirmative case brought by a member of the Fulton County board seeking to have discretion, but there are still cases challenging the rule that the state election board passed to give them that discretion. And then there are rules about some of the other of the 7 rules that the state election board passed, including, by the way, an interesting lawsuit filed by some never Trump Republicans claiming that under a pretty conservative legal theory, all of these rules should be wiped out.
Well, I know that you will stay on top of all of that in Democracy Docket. So again, for those who are watching right now, if you want to follow along, please make sure to subscribe. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. And of course, we'll stay on top of this as soon as we get any updates as far as the Georgia State Election Board is concerned. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Marc Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.